The $1,000 wasn't supposed to be there. 10 bills, untouched, sitting on a polished oak table in Union Square Grill, a Manhattan restaurant where most people made more during a lunch meeting than Mara Reed made in a month. No cameras on that corner table. No witnesses looking her way. No second chances coming. The man who left it behind didn't even look back. Daniel Hwang, tech billionaire, Forbes regular, Silicon Valley royalty visiting New York on business, had been distracted all evening, shaken, broken by a phone call that drained the color from his face and left his $30 appetizer untouched. Mara had watched it happen. She'd been waitressing long enough to read people, the way his hands trembled when he answered his phone, the way his voice dropped to a whisper sharp with panic. She'd caught fragments. If the transplant doesn't come in time. And I can't lose her. Then he stood up, threw cash on the table without counting, and disappeared into the October night. That's when Mara saw it. The money he'd meant to leave was still in his hand. What sat on her table was something else entirely, a stack of hundreds that had slipped from his jacket pocket. 10 of them, crisp, perfectly aligned. A mistake begging to be justified. Mara's rent was 3 weeks overdue. Her father's dialysis bill sat unopened on her kitchen counter in the Bronx. That $1,000 could buy time, the one thing poor people never have enough of. And no one was watching. She had exactly 5 minutes before the table would be cleared. 5 minutes before her manager, Devon, would sweep through with his usual efficiency and pocket anything valuable himself. Most people think they know what they do in that moment. They don't, because real temptation doesn't announce itself as evil. It shows up as relief, as survival, as the answer to prayers you've been whispering into the dark for months. Mara's hand hovered over the bills. What she did next wasn't heroic. It was instinct. She grabbed the cash, clocked out early, and ran. But somewhere between the restaurant's gold-trimmed doors and the subway station 3 blocks away, something shifted inside her. Maybe it was the memory of her father's voice that morning, tired but steady. "Baby girl, we've been broke before. We'll be broke again, but we keep our name clean." Or maybe it was the look on Daniel Hwang's face, the kind of fear that money can't fix. By the time Mara found herself standing outside Mount Sinai Hospital on the Upper East Side, cash still clutched in her shaking hand, she knew one thing for certain. This choice wouldn't just change her night. It would reroute her entire future. The first thing you learn as a server in Manhattan is that rich people don't see you. Not really. You're ambient. Background noise. A function that brings food and removes plates and smiles on command. Mara Reed had been working at Union Square Grill for 2 years, and she'd perfected the art of invisibility. Head down, voice pleasant, movements efficient. Never interrupt. Never assume. Never, ever make them remember your face. It paid $15 an hour plus tips, which sounded reasonable until you factored in the Bronx rent, her father's medical bills, and the student loans from the degree she'd never finished. Most nights, Mara walked home with maybe $60 in her pocket after a double shift. Tonight was supposed to be different. The restaurant was hosting a private corporate event, something about venture capital and emerging markets. The kind of crowd that ordered wine by the bottle instead of the glass. The kind that tipped well if you stayed out of their way. Mara had been assigned to the VIP section on the 2nd floor, where crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, and every table had a view of Union Square Park. Table 12 was hers. Daniel Hwang arrived at 7:47 p.m., 15 minutes late. Mara recognized him immediately, not from personal acquaintance, but from the kind of wealth that makes you visible even when you don't want to be. His face had been on the cover of Wired magazine last month, the headline, "The Man Who Turned Code into Billions." He was younger than she expected. Mid-30s maybe, sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of man who moved through the world like he owned the gravity around him. But tonight, something was wrong. Mara watched as he sat down, checked his phone 3 times in 30 seconds, and waved away the menu she offered. "Just water," he said. His voice was clipped, distracted. "Still or sparkling, sir?" "Doesn't matter." She brought him both. Daniel didn't touch either one. He sat there, staring at his phone like it held a countdown to something terrible. His jaw was tight. His fingers drummed against the table's edge in an anxious rhythm that didn't match the calm around him. Mara had seen that look before. On her mother's face, years ago, in the hospital waiting room. The look of someone waiting for news they already knew would break them. 20 minutes passed. Daniel ordered food he didn't eat. An appetizer that sat untouched. A glass of scotch that went warm in his hand. Then his phone rang. He answered on the first ring. "Tell me," he said. Mara was refilling water glasses 2 tables over, but she could hear the edge in his voice, the desperation. "How long?" "No, that's not... I don't care what it costs. Find another donor. She's 23 years old. She doesn't deserve..." His voice cracked. Mara looked away. It felt wrong to witness this, like eavesdropping on someone's grief. When she glanced back, Daniel was standing. His face was ashen. He threw a wad of cash on the table without counting and walked toward the exit like a man fleeing a fire. That's when Mara saw it. The money on the table, not the $20 or $40 most people left. Not even the generous $100 tip she'd received once from a hedge fund manager who'd had too much wine. 10 $100 bills, $1,000, sitting there like a mistake. Mara's heart kicked against her ribs. She looked around. The other servers were busy. Devon, the floor manager, was downstairs handling the corporate group. The couple at table 14 was deep in conversation, oblivious. No one had seen. Mara's hands were shaking as she pulled the bills toward her, her mind racing. This wasn't a tip. Daniel had been holding cash when he stood up. She'd seen it in his hand as he left. This money had fallen from his jacket, or slipped from his pocket, or been forgotten in his panic. It was a mistake. But mistakes had value. Mara thought about her father. About the dialysis appointments he'd been skipping to save money. About the way he'd smiled last week when she'd brought home groceries, pretending he wasn't exhausted, pretending he wasn't dying slowly because they couldn't afford the treatment that might save him. $1,000 could buy 3 more sessions, maybe 4. It could buy time. Her fingers closed around the bills. She could walk away right now, clock out, take the subway home, tell her father she'd had a good night, pay the rent, buy the medication, sleep without the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her chest. No one would know. No one would blame her. But even as she thought it, Mara felt something twist inside her. A voice that sounded like her father's, steady and unmovable. "Baby girl, we've been broke before. We'll be broke again. But we keep our name clean." She stood there for what felt like an hour, but was probably 30 seconds. Then she made her choice. Mara grabbed her coat, stuffed the money in her pocket, and ran. The October air hit Mara like a slap as she burst through the restaurant's doors onto East 16th Street. The city hummed around her, taxis honking, tourists laughing, the distant wail of a siren somewhere toward Midtown. She scanned the sidewalk. There, half a block ahead, Daniel Hwang, moving fast toward a black SUV idling at the curb. "Wait!" Mara shouted, but her voice was swallowed by the noise of the city. She ran. Her server shoes weren't built for sprinting, and her apron flapped awkwardly against her legs, but she didn't stop. The SUV's door was already open. Daniel had one foot inside. "Mr. Hwang," he paused, turned. His expression was blank, the look of a man so deep in his own crisis that the outside world had become irrelevant. Mara stopped 3 feet away, breathless, holding out the envelope she'd shoved the cash into. "You left this," she managed. Daniel stared at her, then at the envelope, his brow furrowed in confusion. "I didn't—" He stopped, reached into his jacket pocket. His face changed. "How did you—" "It fell out. At your table. I saw you leave and I couldn't let you go without it." For a long moment, Daniel didn't move. He looked at Mara like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, like she'd just spoken a language he thought had gone extinct. "You ran after me," he said slowly, "to return money. It's yours. You could have kept it. I know. No one would have known. I would have known." Something shifted in Daniel's expression. The blankness cracked. Underneath it, Mara saw something raw and human. Surprise, maybe. Or disbelief. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mara. Mara Reed." Daniel took the envelope, opened it, counted the bills with mechanical precision, as if confirming reality. Then he looked at her again, and this time his eyes were sharp, searching. "Why didn't you keep it?" The question hung in the air between them. Mara could have lied, could have said something noble-sounding about honesty and integrity, but the truth was simpler and heavier than that. "Because if I lose my dad," she said quietly, "I don't want it to be on a day I chose money over who I am." Daniel went very still. "Your father's sick?" "Kidney failure. Dialysis 3 times a week. We're managing." "Managing," Daniel repeated. The word sounded bitter in his mouth. "I know what that means. It means you're drowning slowly and pretending you're swimming." Mara didn't argue. There was no point. Daniel looked down at the money in his hand. When he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, like he was talking to himself as much as to her. "My sister's in the hospital right now. Mount Sinai. Liver failure. She's been on the transplant list for 8 months. 8 months of watching her fade while doctors talk about statistics and survival rates and organ availability like she's a logistics problem instead of a person." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and I can't save her. Can't buy her time, can't fix the one thing that matters." Mara didn't know what to say. What could you say to a man who'd just discovered that wealth had limits? "I'm sorry," she offered. Daniel shook his head. "Don't be. You didn't cause this." He paused. "But you did something tonight that I haven't seen in years." "What's that?" "You chose right when it cost you something." He pulled 2 of the $100 bills from the envelope and held them out to her. "For your trouble." Mara stepped back. "I didn't do it for a reward." "I know. That's exactly why you should take it." "Mr. Hwang." "Daniel. And I'm not asking." He pressed the bills into her hand before she could protest further. $200 won't solve your problems, but maybe it buys your father one more treatment. Maybe that matters." It did matter. Mara wanted to refuse on principle, but principle didn't pay for dialysis. "Thank you," she said. Daniel nodded, started to turn toward the SUV, then stopped. "Mara Reed," he said. "I'm going to remember that name." Mara didn't go home. She stood on East 16th Street for 5 full minutes after Daniel's SUV disappeared into traffic, the $200 bills folded in her pocket, her heart still racing from the sprint and the conversation. Something about the encounter felt unfinished, like she'd stepped into a story midway through and missed the beginning. My sister's in the hospital right now. Mount Sinai. The words echoed in her head. Mara knew Mount Sinai. Her father had been treated there 2 years ago, before they'd switched to a cheaper clinic in the Bronx. It was one of the best hospitals in New York, the kind of place where people with money went to fight impossible odds. She should go home, clock out officially, explain to Devon why she'd disappeared mid-shift. Instead, she caught the 6 train uptown. 20 minutes later, Mara walked through the main entrance of Mount Sinai Hospital on Madison Avenue. The lobby was all glass and steel and muted lighting, designed to feel calm even when nothing inside these walls ever truly was. She didn't know why she was here, didn't have a plan. But something about Daniel's expression, the grief barely contained behind his composed exterior, had lodged itself in her chest. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and I can't save her. Mara approached the information desk. I'm looking for a patient, she said. Hwang, admitted recently. Liver failure. The woman behind the desk looked up from her computer. Are you family? Mara hesitated. A friend. The woman's expression said she'd heard that lie 1,000 times. I can't give out patient information to non-family members. Please, I just need to know if she's okay. Hospital policy. I'm sorry. Mara turned away, defeated. Of course it wouldn't be that easy. This wasn't her world. She didn't belong here, chasing answers to questions that weren't hers to ask. She was halfway to the exit when she saw him. Daniel Hwang, standing in the hallway outside the intensive care unit on the 4th floor, visible through the glass elevator shaft as Mara passed. His shoulders were slumped. His head was bowed. A doctor stood next to him, speaking in that careful, clinical way medical professionals used when delivering bad news. Mara's feet carried her to the elevator before her brain caught up. The ICU waiting room was quieter than the lobby. Fewer people. More fear. Mara had been in rooms like this before. Places where hope went to die slowly under fluorescent lights. Daniel was alone now. The doctor had left. He sat in a plastic chair that was too small for the weight he was carrying, staring at nothing. Mara walked over, sat down 1 chair away. You shouldn't be here, Daniel said without looking at her. I know. How did you even find me? You told me where you were going. That's not an invitation. I know that too. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Just 2 people sitting in a space built for waiting and worrying. She's getting worse, Daniel said finally. His voice was hollow. They're talking about emergency measures, about buying time until a donor becomes available, but time isn't something you can buy, not this kind. Mara looked at him, really looked, stripped of his billionaire armor. Daniel Hwang was just a man terrified of losing someone he loved. Money didn't change that. Status didn't soften it. What's her name? Mara asked. Sophie, she's 23. Graduated from Stanford last year. Wanted to be an architect. She used to send me photos of buildings she loved, little sketches in the margins. He smiled, but it was the saddest thing Mara had ever seen. She's brilliant, and funny, and kind in ways that I never learned how to be. She sounds amazing. She is. Was. Is. Daniel's hands clenched. I don't know what tense to use anymore. Mara understood that feeling. the linguistic limbo of loving someone who might not survive. When my mom was sick, she said quietly, I used to sit with her and read her favorite books out loud, even after she stopped responding. The doctors said she couldn't hear me, but I didn't care. I needed her to know I was there. Did it help? I don't know, but it helped me. Daniel looked at her then, really looked, the way most people never bothered to. You came all the way uptown to tell me that? I came because you looked like you needed someone to sit with you, even if it's just for a minute. For the first time that night, something in Daniel's expression softened. Thank you, he said. They sat together in the quiet of the ICU waiting room, a billionaire and a waitress, united by the universal language of fear and hope and stubborn, irrational love. And neither of them knew it yet, but this moment would change everything. 3 weeks later, Mara's phone rang at 6:47 a.m. She almost didn't answer. Unknown number, probably a spam call or a bill collector, but something made her pick up. Ms. Reed? The voice was professional, female, unfamiliar. Yes? This is Catherine Park, executive assistant to Daniel Hwang. Mr. Hwang would like to meet with you this afternoon, if you're available. Mara sat up in bed. Is everything okay? Is Sophie? Miss Hwang received a transplant 4 days ago. She's in recovery. The prognosis is cautiously optimistic. Relief flooded through Mara so suddenly it almost hurt. That's wonderful. Mr. Hwang wanted you to know. He also wanted to thank you in person. Are you free at 2 o'clock? His office is at 40 Wall Street. Mara thought about her shift at the restaurant, which started at 4, and thought about the subway ride from the Bronx to Lower Manhattan, thought about the fact that a tech billionaire wanted to thank her for returning his own money. I'll be there, she said. 40. Wall Street was a limestone tower that looked like it had been built to intimidate. 70 stories of Art Deco grandeur in the financial district, all sharp angles and old money confidence. Mara felt out of place the moment she walked through the revolving doors. The lobby was marble and brass, filled with people in suits that cost more than her monthly rent. She approached the security desk, gave her name, and received a visitor badge that felt like a temporary pass into a world she didn't belong in. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor was silent, except for the soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. Mara checked her reflection in the polished steel doors. She'd worn her best outfit, a simple black dress and the only pair of heels she owned that weren't scuffed. She looked presentable, but presentable wasn't the same as belonging. Catherine Park met her at the elevator. She was mid-30s, sharply dressed, with the kind of efficiency that came from managing impossible schedules. Ms. Reed, thank you for coming. Mr. Hwang is finishing a call. He'll be with you shortly. She led Mara through a reception area that looked like it had been designed by someone who believed office spaces should double as art galleries. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lower Manhattan. The Freedom Tower gleamed in the afternoon sun. Catherine gestured to a sleek leather couch. Please, have a seat. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine. Thank you. Mara sat, waited, tried not to feel like she was auditioning for something she didn't understand. 10 minutes later, Daniel emerged from an interior office. He looked different than he had at the hospital, more composed, more like the man she'd seen on magazine covers. But when he saw Mara, his expression shifted into something genuine. Mara, thank you for coming. She stood. Of course. I'm so glad to hear about Sophie. It's been a difficult few weeks, but she's stable now, talking, complaining about hospital food. All good signs. That's wonderful. Daniel nodded. Walk with me. He led her down a hallway lined with photographs of buildings under construction, tech campuses in Silicon Valley, skyscrapers in Singapore, innovation centers in Berlin, the visual resume of a man who'd built an empire. "I've been thinking about our conversation," Daniel said, "the night you returned the money. It wasn't. Let me finish." He stopped walking, turned to face her. "You asked me something once. Why I didn't just take what wasn't mine. I've asked myself that question every day since." Mara stayed quiet. "Most people in your position would have kept that money," Daniel continued. "Hell, most people would have considered it karmic compensation for an unfair system, a small redistribution of wealth. I wouldn't have blamed you. I would have blamed myself." "Exactly. And that's the difference." Daniel's eyes were sharp, assessing. "Character isn't what you do when people are watching, Mara. It's what you do when no one will ever know. You proved something that night." "Something rare? What's that?" "That integrity isn't situational." Mara didn't know how to respond to that. It felt too big. Too much weight on a decision that had felt instinctive, not heroic. Daniel started walking again. "I want to offer you a job." Mara stopped. "What?" "Not as a server, not as an assistant, as an observer." "I don't understand." "I need someone I can trust," Daniel said. "Someone who sees the world clearly. Someone who won't be corrupted by proximity to power or money. You don't know me." "I know enough. You had $1,000 in your hand and a father who needed it. You gave it back anyway. That tells me more than any resume ever could." Mara's mind was racing. What would I even do? Watch. Listen. Learn. "I'm building something new, an ethical investment fund focused on companies that actually benefit people instead of just extracting profit. I need someone who can spot the difference between genuine innovation and well-marketed exploitation. I'm not qualified for that. You're exactly qualified, because you've lived in the world most investors only study from a distance." Daniel paused. "You'd start at $90,000 a year, full benefits, healthcare for you and your father." $90,000. Mara's current salary was barely 30. Healthcare for her father meant he could go back to Mount Sinai, meant better treatment, meant time. It was too much, too good, too strange. "Why me?" she asked. "Because the night you chased me down to return money you desperately needed, you made a choice that cost you something. That's the only kind of choice that matters." Mara looked out the window at the city sprawled below, at the life she'd been living, scraping by, struggling, surviving, at the possibility of something different. "I'll need to give notice at the restaurant," she said. Daniel smiled. "Take your time. Start when you're ready." They shook hands. And just like that, Mara Reed's life shifted onto a trajectory she'd never imagined. Mara's first day at Hwang Ventures felt like stepping onto a movie set where everyone knew their lines except her. The office occupied 3 floors of 40 Wall Street. Glass walls, minimalist furniture, people in expensive clothes having intense conversations about market disruption and scalability and Series A funding rounds. Catherine had set up Mara with an office, not a cubicle, an actual office, on the 42nd floor. It had a door, a window, a desk made of some dark wood that probably cost more than Mara's childhood home. "Your laptop and phone are already configured," Catherine said, walking Mara through the space with the efficiency of a flight attendant demonstrating emergency exits. "Calendar access is synced. You'll shadow Daniel for the first 2 weeks. Meetings, site visits, pitch sessions. He wants you to see how everything works before we discuss your specific role." "Okay," Mara said, trying to sound confident, trying not to feel like an imposter. Catherine paused, looked at Mara with an expression that might have been sympathy or assessment. "Can I give you some advice? Please, don't try to blend in. Daniel didn't hire you because you belong in this world. He hired you precisely because you don't." That's not exactly reassuring. It should be. Everyone else here is performing a version of themselves they think the room wants to see. You don't have to do that. Be honest. Be observant. That's all he's asking. Catherine left Mara alone in her new office. Mara sat in the expensive chair, looking out at Lower Manhattan, and wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. The first meeting was at 10 a.m. Daniel's conference room could have fit Mara's entire apartment inside it twice. 20 people sat around a table that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of stone. Venture capitalists, entrepreneurs, legal advisors. Everyone spoke in the shorthand of people who'd been in these rooms 1,000 times before. Mara sat in the corner, taking notes on the laptop Catherine had given her, trying to follow conversations that moved too fast for her to process. A startup founder, young, confident, wearing a hoodie that probably cost $500, was pitching an app called Proximity. "We're disrupting the personal assistant space," he said, gesturing at slides full of graphs. "Imagine an AI that knows your schedule, your preferences, your habits. It anticipates your needs before you do. Coffee ordered before your alarm goes off, car waiting outside your building, dinner reservations made at your favorite restaurant the moment you think about eating out." "Impressive," someone said. "What's the privacy architecture?" The founder waved a hand. "Standard encryption. User data stays secure." "Define secure," Daniel said. "We don't sell data to third parties." "But you collect it. For functionality, yes. And if that data is subpoenaed, or hacked, or acquired by a company with fewer scruples than you claim to have?" The founder hesitated. "We have safeguards." "Safeguards," Daniel repeated. The word sounded like an indictment. "Tell me something. Who do you think will use this app?" "Everyone. That's the beauty of it. Universal application." "Wrong. People with money will use it. People who can afford phones that run it, or people who already have the resources to make their lives easier. You're not solving a problem, you're selling convenience to people who don't need it." The room went quiet. "With respect, Mr. Hwang, every successful tech company—" "I'm not interested in what every company does. I'm interested in what your company should do." Daniel leaned forward. "Come back when you've figured out how this technology helps people who can't afford premium smartphones and subscription services. Until then, you're just building another luxury product and calling it innovation." The meeting ended shortly after. Mara watched the founder leave, his confidence deflated like a punctured tire. Daniel caught her eye. "Thoughts?" "He looked like you'd just killed his dog." "His dog will recover. What did you think of the pitch?" Mara chose her words carefully. "It seemed technically impressive, but you're right. It's solving problems rich people don't actually have." "Exactly. And that's 90% of Silicon Valley. Smart people building useless things for people who don't need them." Daniel stood. "Next meeting in 20 minutes. We're touring a biotech facility in Brooklyn. You coming?" "If that's what you want." "It's not about what I want, Mara. It's about whether you're curious enough to find out what matters." She grabbed her coat. The biotech facility was in Red Hook, Brooklyn, tucked between warehouses and artisanal coffee roasters. From the outside, it looked like nothing, a converted factory with minimal signage. Inside, it was a different world. Dr. Aisha Okonkwo met them at the entrance. She was tall, sharp-eyed, and moved with the focused intensity of someone who didn't have time for small talk. "Daniel, good to see you." "Aisha, this is Mara Reed. She's helping me evaluate new investments." Aisha shook Mara's hand. Welcome. How much do you know about synthetic biology? Almost nothing, Mara admitted. Perfect. Then I won't bore you with jargon. Aisha led them through the facility, past rows of gleaming equipment and researchers in lab coats. We're engineering bacteria that can break down microplastics in ocean water. Essentially, we're teaching single-celled organisms to eat pollution. Mara blinked. That's possible. It's more than possible. We've already demonstrated proof of concept in controlled environments. The challenge now is scaling, making it viable for real-world application. They stopped at a window overlooking a room full of large tanks filled with murky water. These are our test environments, Aisha explained. Water samples from the Hudson River, the Pacific Ocean, the Mediterranean. We introduce our engineered bacteria and measure degradation rates. And it works? Mara asked. It works. Not fast enough yet, but it works. Daniel was quiet, watching Mara instead of the tanks. What's the catch? Mara said. Aisha smiled. Smart question. The catch is funding. Research like this doesn't generate immediate returns. Investors want quarterly profits, not decade-long environmental solutions. But you're solving a real problem, Mara said. One that affects everyone. Exactly. Which is why most investors won't touch it. They spent another hour touring the facility. Aisha explained the science in terms Mara could understand, showed them data, introduced them to her team, researchers who could have made more money in corporate labs, but chose this instead. On the drive back to Manhattan, Daniel asked, "What did you think?" Mara didn't hesitate. "You should fund them." Why? Because what they're doing matters. Because it's the kind of thing that won't happen unless people like you make it happen. People like me. People with resources. People who can afford to invest in solutions instead of just profits. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. Catherine's going to draft a term sheet tomorrow. $5 million to start. More if they hit their milestones. Mara stared at him. Just like that? Just like that? You saw what I saw, Mara. A team doing work that matters. That's all the due diligence I need. Most investors would want projections, market analysis, return forecasts. Most investors are myopic. They optimize for next quarter instead of next generation. Daniel looked at her. You know what your superpower is? I don't have a superpower. You do. You see people, not resumes, not pitches, not performance. You see who they actually are. That's rarer than you think. Mara looked out the window at Brooklyn passing by. Maybe he was right. Maybe that was enough. The email arrived on a Friday afternoon. Subject line, regarding recent investment decisions, sender, Victor Grayson, managing partner, Titan Capital. Mara had learned enough about the venture capital world to recognize that name. Titan Capital was one of the oldest, most aggressive firms in the industry. The kind of place where partners talked about portfolio optimization and exit strategies like they were discussing the weather. She forwarded the email to Daniel without opening it. His response was immediate. Come to my office. When Mara arrived, Daniel was reading the email on his monitor. His expression was unreadable. Do you know who Victor Grayson is? He asked. Only by reputation. He was my mentor, taught me everything about venture capital when I was starting out. We had a falling out 5 years ago over philosophical differences. What kind of differences? I wanted to build companies that mattered. He wanted to build companies that made money. We couldn't reconcile that. Daniel turned the monitor so Mara could see the email. Daniel, I've been following your recent investments with interest. The biotech play in Red Hook, the education technology in Detroit, the sustainable agriculture initiative in Iowa. Admirable work, truly. But I'm concerned you're losing sight of what venture capital is supposed to do: generate returns. Your portfolio is starting to look like a charity fund. That's bad for business. Worse, it's bad for the ecosystem. You're setting expectations that other investors will be pressured to match. That's dangerous. I'm calling a partners meeting next week. We need to discuss Hwang Ventures' direction before things get out of hand. Regards, Victor. Mara looked up. He doesn't have authority over your company, does he? No, but he has influence, and he knows where the pressure points are. What kind of pressure? Daniel leaned back in his chair. Titan Capital manages pension funds, endowments, institutional money. If Victor spreads the word that I'm a bad investment, it makes fundraising harder. It makes partnerships more complicated. It puts a target on my back. Because you're funding things that matter? Because I'm funding things that don't maximize short-term profit. Mara felt anger rising in her chest. That's insane. That's capitalism. Victor isn't wrong about the system. He's just wrong about whether we should accept it. So what are you going to do? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm but steel-edged. I'm going to that meeting, and I'm bringing you with me. The partners' meeting was held at Titan Capital's headquarters on Park Avenue. The building was old money beautiful, limestone and brass, and the kind of quiet confidence that comes from generations of wealth. Victor Grayson met them in the lobby. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that filled rooms before he even spoke. Daniel, good of you to come. His eyes shifted to Mara. And you brought a guest. Mara Reed, my strategic advisor. Victor's handshake was firm, appraising. Pleasure. Shall we? The conference room was full of people Mara recognized from financial news. Managing partners, portfolio directors, the architects of modern venture capital. They sat. Victor opened the meeting. Daniel, we've known each other a long time. I respect what you've built, but I'm concerned your recent strategy is unsustainable. Sustainable is exactly what my strategy is focused on, Daniel said evenly. You know what I mean? Financial sustainability. Your portfolio's average ROI is half the industry standard. Because I'm investing in companies that solve problems instead of exploiting them. Noble. But is it viable? Is extracting maximum profit from human suffering viable long-term? Or are we just delaying the inevitable collapse of a system built on inequality? The room tensed. Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're turning venture capital into social work. I'm turning it into something that doesn't require us to check our conscience at the door. Mara watched the exchange like a tennis match, back and forth, ideologies clashing. Then Victor turned to her. Ms. Reed, you're new to this world. What's your take? Mara felt every eye in the room shift to her. This was a test. A trap, maybe. She thought about the biotech facility in Brooklyn. About Dr. Okonkwo's team working to save oceans while investors chased app profits. About her father's dialysis clinic where people died because healthcare was a business instead of a right. I think, Mara said carefully, that you're asking the wrong question. Oh? You're asking whether ethical investing is financially viable. But the real question is whether financial success built on exploitation is morally viable, and whether we're brave enough to care about the answer. Silence. Victor studied her. Interesting perspective. It's the only one that lets me sleep at night, Mara said. The meeting continued for another hour. No conclusions, no resolutions. Just the opening salvo of a war Mara was only beginning to understand. As they left, Daniel said quietly, "That was brave. Or stupid. Sometimes those are the same thing." The betrayal started with a spreadsheet. Mara found it by accident 3 weeks later, while researching a potential education technology investment. She'd been digging through financial documents, learning to read the language of balance sheets and cash flow statements, when she noticed something odd. A series of fund transfers, small amounts, routed through subsidiary accounts to a company called Meridian Holdings. Meridian didn't show up in Hwang Ventures' official portfolio, but the transfers were consistent, monthly, automated. Mara dug deeper. Meridian Holdings was a shell company, no employees, no products, just a legal structure designed to move money from one place to another, and it was owned by Victor Grayson. Mara's hands went cold. She pulled up more records, cross-referenced transactions. Followed the trail of digital breadcrumbs until the pattern became undeniable. Someone inside Hwang Ventures was siphoning money to Victor. Not huge amounts, just enough to stay hidden beneath auditing thresholds. But over 2 years, it added up to almost $12 million. Mara printed the documents, walked to Daniel's office. Her heart was hammering. He was on the phone when she arrived, saw her expression, ended the call. "What's wrong?" Mara closed the door behind her, laid the spreadsheets on his desk. "Someone's stealing from you." Daniel's eyes went sharp. He scanned the documents, his jaw tightened. "How long have you known?" "I found it an hour ago. I wanted to be sure before. Who else knows?" "No one. I came straight to you." Daniel was quiet, processing. When he looked up, his expression was dangerous. "This is sophisticated. Whoever set this up knows our accounting systems intimately. Could it be Victor himself? No, he's too smart to leave a trail. This is someone inside, someone close." The implication hung in the air. Daniel stood, walked to his window, stared out at the city. "I hired 18 people when I started Hwang Ventures," he said quietly. "People I trusted, people I thought shared my vision. One of them has been bleeding my company dry to fund my enemy. What are you going to do? Find them, stop them, make sure it never happens again." He turned back to Mara. "Can you trace where else the money went after Meridian?" "I can try." "Do it. Quietly. Don't tell anyone what you're looking for." Mara spent the next 3 days hunting digital ghosts. She learned forensic accounting through late nights and obsessive research, followed money through layered transactions until her eyes burned. And then she found it. The money didn't stop at Meridian. It went further, to a private equity firm that specialized in hostile takeovers. Victor wasn't just stealing from Daniel. He was building a war chest to destroy him. When Mara showed Daniel the final piece of the puzzle, his face went very still. "He's planning a takeover," Daniel said. "He's going to use my own money to buy out my investors and force me out of the company I built." "Can he do that?" "If he has enough capital, yes. And $12 million buys a lot of influence." "So we stop him." "How?" Mara thought about it. About the game being played above her head. About power and money and the mechanics of betrayal. "We find your mole," she said. "We cut off his funding, and we beat him at his own game." Daniel looked at her with something like pride. "When did you become a strategist?" "About 3 minutes ago," Mara said. They got to work. The mole was Catherine Park. Mara didn't want to believe it. Catherine had been nothing but professional, helpful, kind even. But the evidence was irrefutable. The transaction patterns matched her access levels. The timing aligned with her schedule, and when Daniel confronted her, privately, in his office with Mara as witness, Catherine didn't deny it. She just looked tired. "How long?" Daniel asked. 18 months. "Why?" Catherine laughed bitterly. "Why do you think? Victor offered me double my salary, promised me a partnership at Titan when this was over. I have student loans, Daniel, a mother with Alzheimer's, bills that don't care about my ethics. You could have asked me for help. I did. 2 years ago. You said you'd think about it." Catherine's voice was hollow. "Victor didn't need to think. He just wrote a check." Daniel absorbed that, the guilt of it. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have paid better attention. It doesn't matter now. It matters to me." Catherine stood. "I'll resign, effective immediately. If you want to press charges, I don't want to press charges. I want you to tell me everything Victor's planning, every detail, every timeline, every pressure point." Catherine stared at him. "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm offering you a choice Victor never gave you. Come clean. Help me stop this, and when it's over, I'll write you a recommendation that gets you any job you want, anywhere that isn't working for someone like him." "You'd trust me? After this?" "No, but I believe people can be better than their worst moment." Daniel glanced at Mara. "Someone taught me that recently." Catherine told them everything. Victor's plan was elegantly brutal. Use the siphoned funds to buy out 2 major investors. Call a board meeting. Force a vote on Hwang Ventures' direction. Oust Daniel. Install new leadership focused on profit maximization. It would have worked. But now Daniel knew. And knowledge was the only weapon that mattered. The counter-strategy took 2 weeks to execute. Daniel reached out to his investors personally. Not with numbers or projections, but with stories. He showed them the biotech facility saving oceans, the education platform lifting kids in Detroit, the agricultural initiative feeding communities in Iowa. He asked them a simple question. What kind of world are you investing in? Some didn't care. They wanted returns, not philosophy. But enough cared. Enough remembered why they'd trusted Daniel in the first place. When the board meeting finally happened, Victor showed up confident, ready to execute his takeover. He didn't expect Daniel to have the votes. The motion to oust Daniel failed, 7-3. Victor's face went white. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "It is for you," Daniel replied. "I'm severing all ties with Titan Capital. You're no longer welcome in my offices, no longer invited to my deals. You taught me how to build wealth, Victor, but you forgot to teach me why it matters." Victor stood, walked out without another word. Mara watched him go. Victory felt strange, not triumphant, just necessary. 6 months later, Mara Reed stood in her new apartment in Brooklyn Heights. Floor-to-ceiling windows, view of the East River. A kitchen big enough to cook Sunday dinners for her father, who sat at her table now, healthy again, laughing at something on his phone. His transplant had come through. Daniel had made sure of it. Pulled strings, made calls, turned money into time. Her father looked up. "You okay, baby girl?" "I'm good, Dad." "Still feels strange, doesn't it? Being here. Every day. You earned it." Mara thought about that. About the $1,000 on a restaurant table. About the choice that had changed everything. "I just did what was right," she said. "That's all anyone can do." Her phone buzzed. Message from Daniel. New investment opportunity, renewable energy. Interested? Mara smiled. Typed back. Always. She'd learned the language of venture capital, understood the mechanics of power. could navigate board meetings and read financial statements and spot exploitation disguised as innovation. But the most important thing she'd learned was simpler. Character isn't about what you do when it's easy. It's about what you do when no one's watching, when keeping the money would solve your problems, when doing right costs you everything. That night in Union Square Grill, Mara Reed had made a choice. She'd chosen to be someone her father could be proud of, someone she could live with, and somehow, impossibly, that choice had led her here, to a life where integrity didn't have to mean poverty, where doing good could intersect with doing well, where a waitress from the Bronx could sit at tables with billionaires and remind them what actually mattered. Mara looked out at the city lights, at the world she'd been invited into. She didn't belong here, but she'd earned her place anyway, not through luck, not through connections, but through the simple, radical act of being honest when it would have been easier to lie. That was the real power. That was the transformation, not from poor to rich, but from invisible to essential. And that made all the difference. The end.